We hid from the Nazis for months. And then the day came. They took us all to Treblinka. This is the man who shot mother and father and brother. You don't forget his face. They made the men take the clothes off the women. And then, these animals raped our women in front of us, like we were nothing. I remember this. I remember this man. You do not forget the face of evil. This is the man who murdered my family. 60 years. But I remember this. You don't forget the man who murdered your family. No. 60 years. And I still remember this man. I still see him. And I see him now. Look at him in his gray bathrobe. 60 years ago, he was a brute who beat the inmates. It's incredible how time can change the appearance of a predator. Now, he's an old man like me, a shell. Yet 60 years later, there are still no mistaking those eyes or the shape of his face. Looking at him now, who could imagine his past, Certainly I'm not fooled by the change in his name and identity. To me, he will always be Horst Richter, the beast of Treblinka. Unfortunately, a mild stroke has left me unable to speak. Yet I will not allow this to prevent me from unmasking this evil. I thought it better to wait for my son. That evening, the memories returned, endless, maddening. I could still recall the stench of death coming from the crematoria. Clouds of smoke, rising skywards at moments before had been human beings. Now just black smoke, disappearing into the cold night air. I rose from my bed and searched for an old journal, began to print on the cover, in great big letters, the name Horst Richter and the words Treblinka Death Camp. I needed to jot down my thoughts as clearly as possible, not just for my son, but also to prosecute this demon. I hoped that every word I recorded would be yet another nail in this bastard's coffin. But before I could write a single word, I began to experience pains in my chest, and I retreated back to bed. Shuffling down the hall, I was overcome by the stench of the urine and the feces that permeated the hallway. Further down the corridor, I could hear the haunting sounds of the Alzheimer patients. People once young and alert, now changed forever by time into wretched things, pathetic ghosts, unable to recognize the faces of their family. Nature had destroyed their minds, these poor souls, until they became nothing than a mere collection of cells and bones and a heart that beats with no purpose. As I entered the cafeteria, I became infuriated as I glanced over to host Richter's table. He sat there, the ghoul that had slaughtered my family, now enjoying the company of his own son and grandchild. After all these years, all this time, it was unthinkable that such a vile creature had a chance to live out his life, never responsible for the crimes he committed. That evening's visions returned in enormous waves as I revisit the haunting sounds of hell that took place in that Polish town. I began to relive the look of panic on the faces of family members as they awaited the automatic weapon fire that would extinguish their lives. Finding it more and more difficult to contain my rage, wondering whether I should still wait for my son to appear, I searched my room and spied a dinner tray that had not been picked up. On top of the tray lay a steak knife. I walked to the tray, staring intensely at the implement, my mind raced with continuous flashbacks from hell. I stood motionless, transfixed by the knife, not knowing what to do next. Taking a deep breath, I slowly reached for the utensil and gripped it tightly. The decision seemed clear to me. I knew what had to be done, regardless of the consequences. As I walked down the corridor, I felt a slight pain in my chest. I could sense the tension and anger building within me. Suddenly I heard voices and was surprised to see two nurses quickly approaching me. Discovering my knife, we began to struggle as I was pushed forcefully against a wall. Grasping for breath, my heart racing, I collapsed to the floor. I had lost all sense of time or how long I'd been kept in intensive care, but it was clear to me that I had suffered a major stroke. Unable to move any part of my body, I had finally been transferred back to my old room. I noticed the other bed was empty. Maybe my old pal roommate had died or had been transferred out. But now I realized I was completely alone. A prisoner of my lifeless body, my tormented soul cried out. How could I possibly tell my story now to the outside world? My eyes focused upon the journal. I could see the name Horst Richter Treblinka Death Camp written in those block letters for all to see. But since the German had changed his name, the meaning of my journal's cover could not possibly make any sense to anyone. I deeply regretted never starting my diary. And now, it would be impossible for my son or the hospital to know the truth. Complete exhaustion had set in, and I found myself slowly drifting off to sleep.
Tough break for Mr. Rosenberg. The man can't talk, can't move. It's just terrible. At least he won't be alone in his room anymore. Certainly now that you will be occupying the other bed.
It's certainly very sad about Mr. Rosenberg, but you can be sure, young lady, now that I am his new roommate, that from this moment forward I will be taking extremely good care of my brand new friend.